The first rule they taught us about the Zerati Empire was simple. Never speak to the royal bloodline unless spoken to first. The second rule was even simpler. Never, under any circumstances, speak to a royal child. I broke both rules in the span of 3 seconds. And when the alien queen heard what I called her daughter, I knew, with a certainty deeper than fear, that I was already dead. The day began like every other day since humanity signed the surrender accords. Gray sky. Artificial sun dimmed to a non-provocative spectrum. Military escorts watching every human step, as if we were animals that might suddenly remember how to bite. I was not a soldier. I was not a politician. I wasn't even important. I was a linguistic analyst. My job was to translate human languages into forms a Zerati could understand, and more importantly, to translate their intentions into something humanity could survive. The Zerati ruled over 14 star systems and had erased 3 civilizations before discovering humans. They didn't conquer out of hatred. They conquered out of order. To them, chaos was a disease, and humans, as they politely informed us, were exceptionally contagious. That morning, I was summoned to the royal spire. No explanation, no briefing, just a single phrase transmitted in perfect, emotionless common tongue. The queen requires your presence. No human had ever been summoned alone. I considered running. Instead, I straightened my uniform and boarded the transport. The royal spire rose from the capital world like a blade driven into the planet's heart. Organic metal shimmered between shades of violet and black, alive with biolight patterns that responded to nearby thought waves. Zerati architecture was grown, not built. Even the walls listened. As I passed through the gates, my pulse hammered so hard I wondered if the guards could hear it. They didn't look at me. Zerati guards rarely did. Their attention was elsewhere, toward threats humans couldn't even perceive. Inside the throne chamber, the air felt heavier, charged with something old and vast. The queen sat upon a living throne that pulsed like a heart. Queen Valerix of the Zerati. She was enormous, her form layered with bioluminescent armor plates that shifted subtly with her breathing. Her crown was not worn but grown from her skull, a natural extension of her power. Her eyes, full of them, burned with cold, measured intelligence. And beside the throne, smaller, seated on a raised platform, was her daughter, Princess Zirin. She was nothing like I expected, smaller than the other Zerati nobles. Softer features. Her plates had not fully hardened yet, and faint glimmers of silver ran through her dark carapace like starlight through water. Most importantly, she was watching me, not with contempt, with curiosity. I knelt immediately, heart pounding. "Rise," the queen commanded. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, the kind that crushed worlds. "You were present during the translation incident in Sector 9, Queen Valerix said. "Yes, Your Radiance," I replied. "You were the human who intervened." I clarified intent. "Your Radiance." The Queen's gaze sharpened. "You altered the phrasing of a Zerati military decree." "Yes." "You risked execution." "Yes." Silence stretched. Princess Zirin tilted her head slightly. Her eyes flickered with light. "Why?" the Queen asked. I swallowed. Because the original phrasing would have resulted in the deaths of 3 million civilians due to a mistranslation of the term pacification. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Zerati nobles whispered through chemical clicks. The Queen regarded me for a long moment. "Your action prevented disorder," she said finally. "Yes." "Yet you exceeded your authority." "Yes." Another pause. "Why do humans speak so freely when afraid?" she asked. I hesitated. "Because silence feels like surrender." Princess Zirin's eyes brightened. She rose from her seat and descended the steps, approaching me slowly. The guards tensed. The Queen did not stop her. Zirin stood before me, barely reaching my chest. "You fear my mother," she said. "Yes." "You fear death." "Yes." She leaned closer, studying my face. "Then why do your thoughts soften when you look at me?" The question startled me. I don't know, Princess." She reached out, slowly, carefully, and touched my sleeve. Her plates were warm. "I know," she said softly. And before I could stop myself, before fear could clamp my mouth shut, I smiled. It was instinctive, human, and I said the words that sealed my fate. "It's all right, my love." The chamber went silent, dead silent. Every noble froze. Every god snapped to full alert. Princess Zirin's eyes widened, not in fear, but surprise. And then, the queen rose. The throne screamed. The air shattered with psychic pressure so immense my knees buckled. Queen Velarix turned her gaze upon me, and I felt something ancient, furious, and utterly unstoppable lock onto my existence. "My daughter," the queen said, her voice trembling with restrained violence, "is not your love." I collapsed to the floor, breath crushed from my lungs. "This human," the queen declared, "has overstepped all boundaries." Her eyes burned. "Prepare the execution chamber." I did not scream. I did not beg, because as I lay there, crushed beneath the queen's wrath, Princess Zirin stepped forward, and she said 4 words that changed everything. "Mother." He did not lie. Middle. The execution chamber was older than humanity's recorded history. It was not a room but a living organism, grown from the queen world's core biomass. Walls pulsed like lungs. The floor responded to thought, tightening and loosening as if deciding whether to swallow me whole. I was bound at the center, restrained by bioorganic tendrils that wrapped around my limbs and torso. They didn't hurt, not yet, but they were strong enough to tear a human apart with minimal effort. Queen Velarix stood elevated above me, her presence filling the chamber like gravity itself. Princess Zirin was not supposed to be there, yet she stood beside her mother, small hands clasped, eyes never leaving me. "You spoke a term of possession," the queen said, her voice echoing through bone and flesh alike. My throat was dry. I used a human expression. It was not meant as. Silence. The chamber obeyed her will. Even my heartbeat seemed to pause. In Zirati lore, the queen continued, "To name a royal child with intimacy implies claim." My blood ran cold. Claim implies intent. The nobles watching from the upper tiers murmured approval. Intent implies threat. I closed my eyes. "So be it," the queen declared. "Your species has long tested the boundaries of tolerance." "Mother," Zirin said quietly. The queen did not tone, but her plate shifted. "You may speak," she allowed. "He did not seek to claim me," Zirin said. "He sought to comfort." The chamber stirred uneasily. "Explain," the queen said. Zirin stepped closer to me. The restraints loosened slightly, responding to her presence. When he spoke, his surface thought aligned with protective patterns, she said. There was no dominance, no hunger, only reassurance. A ripple of unease spread among the nobles. "Humans lie," one hissed. "They deceive even themselves." Zirin turned her gaze upward. "Then allow me to test him." The queen finally looked at her daughter. "What do you propose?" Zirin's voice was steady. "Bond him to me." Gasps erupted. I stared up at her in horror. "Princess." "If he intended harm," she continued, "the bond will reveal it. If he did not, then his mind will remain intact." The queen's eyes narrowed. "And if he survives?" "Then he will belong to the crown," Zirin said. My stomach dropped. "Belong? How?" the queen asked. "As a witness," Zirin replied. "A human bound to royal truth." Silence followed. At last, Queen Velarix spoke. "So be it." The restraints released. The floor beneath me softened, reshaping into a sigil I recognized from forbidden translations. A mind lattice. Zirin stepped onto it with me. "Do not resist," she said gently. I wanted to scream that I didn't understand, that this wasn't what I meant, that I was just a translator who had spoken without thinking. But when her hand took mine, warmth spread through my chest. The bond activated. Memories flooded my mind, not hers, but ours. Her loneliness inside a court that feared her potential. My guilt over humanity's failures. Her curiosity about human emotions. My quiet hope that we could someday be more than subjects. The Queen staggered back slightly, eyes widening. "The bond stabilizes," she whispered. Zirin smiled faintly. "He meant it," she said. "Not as possession, as care." The Queen looked at me, not with fury now, but with something far more dangerous. "Interest. You will live," Queen Valerix declared. Relief flooded me. "For now." The nobles recoiled. "You are bound to my daughter," the Queen continued. "Your thoughts will be observed, your loyalty tested." She leaned closer. "If you betray her, I will unmake your species molecule by molecule." I nodded shakily. "Yes, your radiance." The Queen turned away. "Prepare the integration." And just like that, my execution became something far worse. Middle continued. Integration was not kindness. It was exposure. For the first time, a human was allowed into the inner workings of the Zurati royal mind net, a psychic lattice that connected nobles, generals, and the Queen herself. I felt it pressing at the edges of my consciousness, testing, tasting, learning. Princess Zirin became my anchor. Without her presence, my mind would have shattered. She visited me daily in the observation chambers, where I was studied like a living anomaly. "You are afraid of us," she said once, sitting beside me. "Yes." "Yet you do not hate us." "No." "Why?" I thought for a long moment. "Because hatred requires distance," I said. "And now, I see you." She considered that. "My mother believes fear creates order," Zirin said. "And you?" "I believe understanding does." The bond deepened. Through her, I learned the truth of the Zurati. They were not monsters. They were survivors of a universe that had nearly destroyed them. Order was their shield. Control their religion. Human unpredictability terrified them, not because we were weak, but because we were creative. Chaos, to them, was extinction. The more I understood, the more I realized why the Queen had not killed me. I was a variable she could not predict. And Princess Zirin was changing. She began questioning decrees, softening policies, introducing measured mercy. The nobles resisted. Whispers of sedition spread. And I felt it through the bond, the gathering storm. One cycle. As we stood overlooking the queen-walled horizon, Zirin spoke softly. "My mother will face a challenge soon." I stiffened. "A coup." "An ascension trial," she said. "One that will test her claim to eternal rule." "What happens if he fails?" Zirin looked at me. "The empire fractures." "And you?" "I would be hunted," she said calmly. The bond pulsed with fear. "Then we won't let that happen," I said. She smiled sadly. "You are still human." "And proud of it." She took my hand. "When the trial begins," she said, "I will need you to speak." "To whom?" "To the empire." My breath caught. "I am only a human." "You are more," she said. "You are proof that understanding does not weaken power." The trial began 3 cycles later. The Queen stood before the conclave of stars. Accusations flew of softness, of contamination, of weakness through association with a human. When it was my turn, I stepped forward, heart pounding. I spoke of fear, of survival, of how order without compassion becomes tyranny, of how compassion without order becomes collapse. I spoke of balance, and I spoke of a queen who loved her daughter enough to listen. The chamber fell silent. Queen Valerix looked at me. For the first time, her gaze softened. The trial ended. The queen remained. But something had changed.